Today, the Matt Walsh Show, BLM agitators call for riots and vigilantism in the wake of the Daniel Penny verdict. None of that has happened so far. Is this a sign that the BLM era is officially over? Also, Trump begins to unveil his plan to end birthright citizenship, and a left-wing publication shares its conspiracy theory about me. They say that I'm gearing up to run for governor. Is that true? The answer may shock you. It definitely shocked me. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Are you feeling the stress about giving your family a memorable holiday? You're not alone. Prices remain higher than ever, and a lot of us are maxing out our credit cards. Now's the perfect time to take control of your finances and pay off that debt. If you're a homeowner, American Financing can help you unlock the equity in your home and start saving. Their customers save $800 a month on average. Just imagine what that could mean for your family. Plus, if you act now, you could even delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you extra cash for the season. Wouldn't it be nice to start off the new year without that debt and those monthly minimum payments? It costs nothing to find out how much you could save. The holidays will be here before you know it. So call one of their salary-based mortgage consultants today. American Financing, call now, 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711. Or if you're more digitally inclined, visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh, NMLS 182334, NMLS Consumer Access. Do it now before the next economic crisis hits. NMLS 182334, NMLS ConsumerAccess.org. Open an IRA in gold with Birch Gold and get free silver shipped directly to your home. That's right. It's the most wonderful time of the year, the only time of the year that Birch Gold gives away a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchase. And here's the best part. You don't have to pay a penny out of pocket. Simply convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, and Birch Gold will send you free silver coins directly to your home. Now, you might be thinking, why do I need to diversify into gold? Trump's headed to D.C. Come January, things are looking good. Well, here's the fact. An administration trying to reverse a $36 trillion national debt in just 4 years is like a field mouse trying to stop a freight train. We can't even afford to pay the interest on the debt, let alone the principal. So take action now. Text Walsh to 989898 before December 18th for a free info kit on gold and to claim your eligibility for free silver on qualifying purchases from Birch Gold. Do this before December 18th. Again, text Walsh to the number 989898 for peace of mind that lasts longer than 4 years. When the jury voted to acquit Daniel Penny yesterday morning, we can be pretty sure that their verdict came as a pretty big shock to Alvin Bragg and Daphne Yorin and the rest of the Manhattan DA's office. That's because on Friday, just a few days ago, as we talked about yesterday, the jury announced that it couldn't come to a unanimous verdict on count 1, which is manslaughter. That meant that at least one juror was committed to voting guilty on the most serious charge. Nothing could change that juror's mind, supposedly. That's why they couldn't come to an agreement. Now, logically speaking, that meant that there was no conceivable way that the jury would ever vote unanimously to acquit Daniel Penny on count 2, which was criminally negligent homicide. After all, count 2 was a lesser included charge. It's not possible that Penny could have committed manslaughter without also being criminally negligent as well. So if at least one juror was sure that Penny committed manslaughter, then of course that juror would also be sure that Penny was criminally negligent. That's the logic the prosecutors were using on Friday when they petitioned the judge to dismiss count 1 and send the jury back to consider count 2 by itself. It was unconstitutional, it was unethical, and they did it because they didn't think it was possible that an acquittal would result. They didn't imagine that their scheme would backfire spectacularly because a juror or multiple jurors would change their mind from guilty to not guilty. But, of course, that's what happened on Monday. We don't know why that happened. It could be that the juror who was in favor of convicting Penny realized after the stunt the prosecutors pulled on Friday that Penny was being railroaded. Maybe the juror was bored and wanted to go home. I mean, who knows? The end result was that a jury of 12 people, mostly consisting of women in one of the most left-wing cities in the entire country, voted to acquit Daniel Penny. They totally and unequivocally rejected the lie that BLM and the media had been pushing for more than a year about this case. Now, for their part, BLM doesn't appear to be deterred by this development. Here, for example, is Shavona Newsom, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York, and she went off on a predictable anti-white tirade after the verdict. Watch.
CHIVONA, NEWSOME. I'm the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York, and I'm a devout Christian. And in my Bible, thou shalt not kill. In the Torah, thou shalt not kill. In Buddhism, not kill a living thing. There is no one coming to save black people, or else we wouldn't live in these ghettos, we wouldn't be in these prisons, and we would be further along than we are. We wouldn't be at the absolute bottom. So forgive me for being jaded and cynical, but once we saw those non-white jurors, we knew that this case was over. None of them. Non-white jurors. The only crime that Jordan Neely was guilty of was the color of his skin. Come on. But luckily for Daniel Penny, his skin was not like Jordan's, because you honestly wouldn't have seen our face. The NYPD would have arrested him after 3 hours. The justice system would have found him guilty. And shame on this jury. Because to be real, they didn't even try. Once the lesser charge was removed, they came back an hour later and said it was deadlock. Less than an hour and 20 minutes later, they said not guilty. These wonderful white people, I hope they celebrate their Christmas while the Neely family is praying and asking God for comfort. Damn them and damn America.
So the only crime Neely committed was being black. No, there were actual crimes. He committed a lot of crimes actually as a career criminal, and even on the train that day. Actually shouting that you're going to kill people on a train is a crime. Threatening to kill people in public, that's a crime. So there's one. But there is one line that really stands out amid that sea of overt race hatred that we just heard. And that was when she said, quote, "There's no one coming to save black people." And yeah, I mean, right. That's true. That's right, Shavona. I'm glad you're finally starting to catch on. There's no one coming to save black people, absolutely. There's no one coming to save anyone. Okay, because people are responsible for themselves. That's how life works, Shavona. Black people need to save themselves, take care of themselves, take care of their own community. Same for people of all other races. That's what it means to be an adult in a free country. So if you're a black person living in a ghetto, as she just said, you can move. I mean, you can move to a better community. You could, even better, you could work to clean up your own community with the people in your community. You could do that. Instead of sitting around waiting, why isn't anyone saving us? That's not the way it works. You're an adult. Act like it. Now, of course, in this case, Jordan Neely was given taxpayer-funded housing and health care at a treatment facility in the Bronx after he admitted to punching a 67-year-old woman. Prosecutors set him up with all that wonderful stuff instead of throwing him in prison. He abandoned the facility in less than 2 weeks and shortly afterwards began harassing people on Daniel Penny's train. And the rest, as they say, is history. And so is Jordan Neely at this point. So in this particular instance, people did try to save Jordan Neely, and he thanked the community for its efforts by threatening to kill them all, okay? But as we all know, preaching the virtues of personal responsibility isn't the best way to secure handouts in the grievance industry. So instead of doing that, Shavona Newsom decides to attack the jury. She basically says they're all white supremacists. But the racial argument doesn't even come close to making sense here because the jury wasn't all white, as she admits. There was a black person, an Asian person, a Middle Eastern person on the jury. There was a guy wearing a COVID mask the entire time. And somehow the prosecutors couldn't even convince that guy to convict Daniel Penny. So if white supremacy is to blame here, it's a very strange, multiracial, multicolored kind of rainbow white supremacy that we're dealing with. Now, for his part, washed-up former NBC anchor Mehdi Hassan did his best to contribute to the same narrative. He wrote, quote, just imagine if Jordan Neely had been white and Daniel Penny was black. Imagine what some of the folks defending Penny today would be saying. Just imagine. Well, turns out we don't have to imagine this scenario, Mehdi. As an editor for Redux pointed out, last year, just a day before Daniel Penny was indicted, a black man named Jordan Williams stabbed a violent homeless man to death on a Brooklyn train. Now, the homeless man punched Williams' girlfriend and threatened other passengers before Williams eliminated the threat. It's a very similar situation to the Daniel Penny case. Now, you could say, well, it's different because in this case, he punched someone. True, but he was also threatening. But then on the other side of it, Jordan Williams actually stabbed the guy, okay? Took out a knife and stabbed him. So it all balances out to be, basically the same sort of thing. And what happened there? Well, there was no need for anybody on the right to rally behind Jordan Williams because he was never indicted. The DA didn't pursue political charges in a transparent attempt to ruin his life. He's a free man. He's been a free man ever since the grand jury refused to indict. So this is something that's reserved, kind of treatment that's reserved for white defendants like Daniel Penny, which is why we rally behind Daniel Penny. Now, of course, Mehdi Hassan doesn't care about any of this. Neither does Jordan Williams, by the way. Jordan Williams himself, the guy that, stabbed the dude on the subway, he recently called for the jury to convict Daniel Penny of manslaughter. He also claimed that Penny had attacked, quote, random people for no reason. Now, just to reiterate, a guy who did the same thing as Daniel Penny publicly called for Daniel Penny to be prosecuted and convicted. Why did he say that? Well, obviously because Penny is white. Because what Mehdi Hassan is talking about, of course, we all know, the reverse is true. Okay? There were no conservatives saying that Jordan Williams should be thrown in jail. Who said that? Find me one conservative who said that Jordan Williams, the black guy who stabbed the homeless guy, who said he should go? None of us said that. We're all quite happy that he's not in jail. Even if he is like a kind of a traitorous scumbag who turned around and tried to throw Penny under the bus, but still. No, the reverse is true. That if Penny is black, you people don't care. And we know that because none of them are marching in the street calling for Jordan Williams to be thrown in jail. So these people are just blindly repeating the narrative to agitate, and because historically, that's all they've had to do. And that has been BLM's strategy for the past decade or so, as we know. They recite some form of lazy anti-white race hatred based on lies, and then the mobs start rioting. That's generally how it's gone. But this time around, it's been kind of interesting because that hasn't really happened. There have been no riots in New York over this verdict, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any. There were some protests last night, but they were, by historical standards, very small and subdued. One might even say low energy. You get the sense that yesterday morning, BLM activists knew that they weren't going to get a especially fiery response from the mob. So Hawk Newsom, the brother of Shavona Newsom, and the other co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York, had to come out and explicitly call for vigilantes to rise up. This is a bit like watching a movie and the director's worried that you're not going to get the subtext, so they just come right out and tell you what they're trying to get you to do. And it's just as sort of embarrassing and on the nose in this case. Watch.
Just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired. I know y'all looking for us to be like, oh, go and march. No. Hey, Russ, tonight, goddammit. Y'all make sure y'all get home, get dressed. I'm going to fly. Y'all make sure y'all come out tonight. They gonna hear us tonight. Damn it. Y'all gonna get y'all money tonight. Y'all gonna get y'all money's worth tonight, mother. Yeah. Load that shit up. Y'all gonna get y'all money's worth tonight. No justice. No peace. No justice. No peace. No justice.
Now, of course, what's funny is that Shavona, I guess his brother, had just been up there saying, "Thou shalt not kill." The Bible, I'm a Christian, and I don't believe in killing. And then her brother gets up there and says, "Kill the white people, kill them." And you hear Shavona, "That's right. Yep, yep, that's right. Amen to that." It's just, you can only laugh at it because these people are just, it's no credibility. They're not even trying to appear to have any integrity whatsoever. Now, as uninspiring and desperate as all this is, it's important to keep in mind that this ordeal isn't over for Daniel Penny. He's been acquitted of the criminal charges, but Jordan Neely's family is still suing him for negligence. So they're going to try to bankrupt him and profit as much as they can. To that end, yesterday, Neely's father appeared in public in an attempt to garner some sympathy for himself. And listen to what he said.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. The system is rigged. Come on, people. Let's do something about this.
Now, Neely's father implores the crowd to do something about this alleged injustice that his family has supposedly endured. And that's an interesting way of phrasing it. As Neely's father, you know, he could have done something about it by raising his son rather than abandoning him for his whole childhood only to surface when he stands to make millions of dollars. Somehow Neely's father never gets around to explaining why he only cares about his son now that he's dead. I mean, even calling him Neely's father at all is vastly overstating the case. He's more like a glorified sperm donor. And now he shows up, you know, pretending to weep. Now, at this point, it's not really necessary for me to go any further. The BLM activists have discredited themselves to such a degree that Manhattan juries don't believe a word they say. Every side of the political spectrum understands that BLM is fundamentally an anti-human, anti-civilization, anti-white movement. And pretty much everyone is now roundly rejecting it. That's why Daniel Penny was acquitted. And it's why there are no riots. At the same time, just because the BLM era is ending, which it is, that doesn't mean that everybody's on board with the rule of law and with a stable, properly ordered society. In fact, the opposite is true. The aftermath of the assassination of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, makes that pretty clear. Now, when I talked about the killing last week, I explained why ghouls on the left, like Taylor Lorenz and Columbia University professors, were celebrating Thompson's murder while mourning the death of Neely. And in their worldview, you know, Brian Thompson deserves to die because he's white and rich and powerful. Like, for them, that's really the only reason. It's actually got nothing to do with healthcare. They don't even care about that. But Jordan Neely, as a black career criminal, should be celebrated as a hero. This is the way they look at it. This is an ideology that reveres the least productive members of society while calling for the public executions of men who are actually earning a living and providing for their families, at the very least. It's an anti-white, anti-human ideology, and it must be rejected. Now, in response to my monologue, many people wrote in with negative responses in the comments on YouTube and so on. And apparently somebody at Newsweek noticed this, and they wrote a whole article about it. I guess it was a slow news week over a Newsweek, and there are some pretty comical paragraphs in this Newsweek article too, which is what you'd expect from an article that's devoted to a YouTube comment section. So for example, here's one paragraph, quote, "Commentators like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh are being told by their supporters that they've got it wrong when it comes to Thompson's murder. At least 3 users expressed to Walsh that even though they agree with a lot of his opinions, he was dead wrong on this one." Yes, at least 3 users expressed to Walsh that I was dead wrong on this one. At least 3. Not a maximum of 3, at least 3. Now, the actual number of people who disagreed with me, in fact, it's even higher than that. I guess Newsweek is still looking into the matter, but I'll save them some trouble. Because indeed, there were slightly more than 3 comments that were critical. There were a lot of comments. Here's one of them, which Newsweek quoted. This is pretty representative, I think, of the overall response. Quote, and this, by the way, is a response to me simply saying that it's bad to murder people, like first-degree murder in the street is bad. That was my provocative case that I was making. So here's what someone said. Quote, "The fact that Matt is trying to paint this as a left-wing issue when there's clearly bipartisan celebrations going on just goes to show how out of touch celebrities are, whether on the right or left, with regular, everyday, ordinary people." So the contention is that I'm wrong to rail against leftists for celebrating the public execution of a CEO because, in fact, people all over the political spectrum are celebrating this execution. And supposedly regular, ordinary people on the right disagree with me. Now, let me address this as directly as I can. And as I said yesterday on X, if you are a conservative expressing any sympathy with leftists who are celebrating the murder of a businessman by some mentally deranged loser, then you're not a conservative. And I say that because we stand for law and justice and a stable, properly ordered society. That if we don't stand for that, we don't stand for anything that matters. If we don't, at a minimum, believe that, then nothing matters. It's like, let's just give up at that point. Now, leftists want the opposite of all of that, okay, which is why murder and mayhem in the street fills these sickos with orgasmic glee. If you're on the right and you find yourself even slightly siding with a crazy wench like Taylor Lorenz on this issue or any issue, it should tell you something pretty troubling about yourself. And it tells the rest of us something too. Now, that's not to say that United Healthcare is blameless. It's not to say that healthcare in this country can't be improved. I made all that clear on Friday. At the same time, the fact remains that United Healthcare doesn't have particularly large profit margins, and they exist in a competitive marketplace with many other big insurance companies, all of which compete to cover claims without greenlighting every single expense that doctors want to charge. It's not the ideal process, but it has to occur under our current system, or else healthcare costs go higher, insurance companies go bankrupt, and then no one's able to get any coverage. This right now is our alternative to a far more dysfunctional state-run system like Canada's, which now regularly murders its own patients to avoid having to pay for their care. Okay, so that's what we're balancing here. It's a complicated thing. And plenty of criticisms, valid criticisms can be made against the insurance company. No one is denying that for even a second. So any problems with healthcare access and coverage in this country, and there are obviously problems, can't be boiled down to this one company. It's a larger issue that is not addressed at all by killing the CEO of this company or any company. But the important point is that even if shooting Brian Thompson in the back would make United Healthcare somehow operate more efficiently and ethically, which it won't, it would still be a great moral evil to kill him. If anything distinguishes the right from the left, it's principles like this. We don't settle policy debates like Bolsheviks. Once you start down this path, then civilization collapses. Every time. Show me the example of when they started killing people on the street. Well, let's go kill all the rich people. Show me an example where that led to something good, especially from a conservative perspective. Show me the part where that's the beginning of a good thing. That's why the left is so thrilled about Brian Thompson's execution. It's why Taylor Lorenz is now giving television interviews where she's giddy. I mean, she's like overcome with joy at the murder of a father and husband. Watch.
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that be murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
But why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the system.
You seem to find the whole thing hilarious.
I find your question funny.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year.
I mean, I don't know what else to say other than, and I really don't care how many negative comments on YouTube or you're out of touch. I really don't care. I mean, if you see any common purpose with that person that you just saw there, if you sympathize with this psychopath, then you have a problem. I mean, it doesn't matter if you call yourself right or left. And by the way, if you're on the right and you find yourself nodding along with this despicable, disgusting psycho while she expresses joy in the fact that a guy was shot in the back of the head, please realize that Taylor Lorenz also feels the same way about you personally, okay? Some of the dumbest comments were, Matt is trying to divide us. He's trying to divide you? What? If you're a conservative and what, you think you're uniting with the left on this? What, you think we're holding hands, kumbaya moment? Yes, let's kill rich people? Is that what you think is happening? They also want the same thing to happen to you. You are also the bad guy in their worldview. Taylor Lorenz also thinks it would be okay, even joyful, to murder you. That's the person you're finding common cause with. So you're cheering along, yes, let's murder people, and then they're going to turn the gun around on you. Well, no, not me. Well, no, him, not me. What are you doing? How many times does this need to happen before we all understand that it's the way it goes? This is a matter of basic principle. It's the most basic. I mean, we're conservatives. We want to conserve at the most fundamental level civilization itself. Violent crime in the street degrades and destroys civilization, which is why we oppose it. One of the comments I received, for example, was about how I should, quote, read the room. In other words, when a literal bloodthirsty mob is out calling for the murder of people, I should join in because it's what the mob is doing. It's like literally proposing mob mentality as a good thing. No, it's precisely when the mob is bloodthirsty that you need to step up and say the truth. You don't need to read the room to find out if you're opposed to first-degree murder. You know, since all this happened, we've learned a lot about the man who killed Brian Thompson, 26-year-old Ivy League graduate Luigi Mangione. The assassin was arrested yesterday at McDonald's, and within just a few years, the alleged assassin, we had, within a few hours, we had access to all of his social media profiles, his Goodreads profile, speeches he gave in high school, everything. Meanwhile, several people that Luigi interacted with recently, including his friends and various social media personalities, have come forward to describe their conversations with him. And it's worth pointing out that we never got anywhere near this level of information about Thomas Crooks, who somehow evaded the Secret Service and very nearly assassinated Donald Trump live on television. Thomas Crooks is like a ghost, but Luigi Mangione is all over the place. Within an hour of him being identified, we knew all the books that he's read for the last 2 years. Okay, that's how intimately we know this person now. Thomas Crooks, we don't know anything. Still. Make of that what you will. But from what we know, Luigi comes from a very wealthy family in Maryland. His late grandfather has a real estate empire that includes prominent country clubs and hotels. He went to a high school that costs north of $40,000 a year. Luigi also appears to be psychologically disturbed. Not that anyone should be surprised by that. He apparently dropped off the face of the earth a few months ago, ignoring friends who were publicly asking where he was. In other words, there's a very real possibility that Luigi Mangione, who had no clear direction in life, had access to more money than the CEO he gunned down in the street. He certainly came from a much wealthier family than Brian Thompson did. Thompson's father was a grain elevator worker. He went to the University of Iowa, started his career as an accountant before working his way up at United Healthcare over the course of more than 20 years. And he was on his way to work at 6:40 in the morning when a mentally ill trust fund baby decided to murder him in the street. Apparently, this trust fund baby decided that murder was preferable to paying his bills or whatever. This is the left's hero. This is the kind of violent scumbag they're aligned with. I don't care who gets mad about it. It is a leftist position, so I will continue calling it that. It is absolutely a leftist position. They are on the side of Jordan Neely and Luigi Mangione because they're driven by a barely concealed desire to destroy the foundation of this country, which is the rule of law. That's the common thread here. Either the rule of law applies to everybody, of all financial backgrounds, of all professions, of all races, or it doesn't exist. And it's now clear that the left would prefer that we abandon the rule of law in order to accelerate the end of the United States. But for our part, conservatives, we are not Bolsheviks. We are the only bulwark against these arsonists of civilization. We stand for what is morally right, regardless of what the mob demands. And the morally correct position here, obviously, is that it is evil to walk up to somebody on the street and shoot them in the back. It should not be celebrated in any way. You can either conserve basic moral principles like that, or you can conserve nothing at all. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Let's take a look at a couple of stories here. NBC New York has this. New Yorkers could get inflation refund checks of up to $500 from the state government next year under a proposal that Governor Kathy Hochul announced on Monday. The plan, which must first be approved by state lawmakers, would send out one-time payments of $300 to people who earn less than $150,000 a year and $500 to families making less than $300,000. I mainly want to talk about this because I just want to play this clip of Kathy unveiling this brilliant scheme to combat inflation by giving out money, because that works every time, right? It's not like that backfires and causes more of the problem it's supposed to supposedly be addressing every single time. But here is Kathy, the great Kathy of New York, laying out this plan and unveiling it in dramatic fashion. Here it is.
In my budget next month, they will send you a check to buy your groceries for a month or whatever you want to spend it on. And if you're an individual earning up to $150,000 a year, it's $300. What does that look like? All right. How about that for individuals? Now, if you're filing jointly and you have a family, you need a little more, right? Mm-hmm. Families are expensive. How about this? $500. $500 for families earning less than $300,000, because I know life in New York City is expensive and your salaries may sound nice, but they don't go very far.
$500. $500, which in New York City will buy you like a pizza. But it's supposed to pay for groceries for a month, $500 for a family. Okay? In New York. Apparently, Kathy doesn't realize that $500 is enough to pay for groceries for a family for like a week and a half, maybe. And yet she actually has these large you didn't see this if you're listening to the audio podcast, but she has these large oversized checks made up. And the best part is she says, what does that look like? I'll show you what $300 looks like. And she unveils the check. As if we're supposed to be convinced that $300 or $500 is more than it really is, because the check is really big, you know. And this, by the way, is literally a plot line from The Office. I mean, there's an episode where Michael Scott donates, I can't remember, like a couple $100 or something to some charity and insists on having it written up on an oversized ceremonial check. And it was a hilarious idea that comedy writers put into a sitcom script, and now Democrat governors are adopting it as an actual political strategy. But of course, the bigger problem here is that none of this is going to help with inflation. Giving people money does not make inflation go away. It does the opposite. And it's the worst of all worlds, because it's enough to make inflation worse, but it's not enough to actually make a difference in anybody's monthly budget anyway. Now, granted, it sounds like this is some sort of tax refund or something like that, in which case it's not, this is not a welfare handout or something. It's not an entitlement. Taxpayers are getting their own money back. But it's not going to help. I'll tell you what would help. Okay, here's what you could do. The New York State income tax ranges from, I think, 4 to 10 or 11%. Get rid of that. If you really want to put money in people's pockets and do it in a way that won't increase inflation, then let them keep their own money. Put money in their pockets by just not taking it out of their pocket to begin with. And that will amount to a lot more than $300 for virtually all taxpayers in the state. You could just do that, but you're not going to do that. Instead, you'll keep taking their money while returning a small pittance and expecting them to fall over in gratitude. I mean, it's grotesque. It's funny because it's so clumsy and awkward and stupid, but it's also grotesque that this is the taxpayers' money that you took, and now you're giving it back to them in the form of an oversized check. It's like if you loaned somebody $100 and it took them forever to pay you back, and you had to keep asking them about it, and finally they give it back to you, and they do it in this ceremonious way, congratulating themselves with a big oversized check. It's like, no, dude, can you just give it in cash, okay? Venmo me. I don't need the whole ceremony. You're not doing something generous here. That's my money you're giving back to me. Very similar situation here. DailyWire has this. President-elect Donald Trump said during an interview that aired over the weekend that the first executive orders he will sign immediately upon taking office will deal with the border and the economy. He said that he's planning on ending birthright citizenship on day one, and that if he can do it through executive action, he will. And we have the clip here. Here he is talking about ending birthright citizenship.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. If somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it.
Okay, so Trump wants to end birthright citizenship. He wants to try to do it through executive orders. There are obviously major questions about whether it can be done that way. It's going to be a big legal fight no matter what, because you have to contend with the 14th Amendment. So in terms of the exact levers that should be pulled to end it, and in terms of how exactly you go about ending it, that's a legal question that people smarter than me will have a lot of opinions about, and we'll hear many of those opinions in the coming months, of course. But I can say with absolute certainty that whatever you have to do to end it, yes, you should end it. A birthright citizenship needs to end in whatever way possible, by whatever means necessary. It needs to end. It's absurd. It's a joke. The idea that, a woman can sneak across the border and have a baby 2 days later and the baby is automatically a citizen is just farcical. It's funny because on most constitutional questions, the left will be the first to claim that the Constitution was written at a different time, and most of what you find in it, they would say, especially gun rights, free speech, even states' rights, they would say that most of that is outdated and archaic. We hear about the Constitution as, what do they say, a living document and all of that, and they're wrong about all that. The principle of free speech can't really be outdated. Gun rights are not outdated. Sure, firearm technology has changed, but that doesn't change the basic principle that you have a right to bear arms, you have the right to self-defense. And same with free speech. The means of communicating our ideas have drastically changed. The founding fathers had no idea about the internet, of course, but that doesn't change the basic principle of free speech. However, when it comes to birthright citizenship, things have fundamentally changed since the amendment was codified in the 1860s or whenever it was. So this is one time when you can reasonably argue that the constitutional principle is simply out of date to the point of irrelevance. Yet it's the one area where, the left won't argue that. Because here's what we know. When that amendment was enacted, you did not have millions of people sneaking into the country every year. We were not, as we are now, a fully formed and settled and highly populated country with 330 million people living in 50 states from coast to coast. And we did not have millions of additional people trying to sneak into the country to take advantage of our welfare system and our entitlement systems. None of that was happening in the 1860s. None of that applied. None of that existed, okay? And it was not foreseen. It was not imagined. So in the 1860s, birthright citizenship made sense, you could argue. Now it doesn't. It just simply doesn't. I mean, look at it this way. If birthright citizenship was never a thing to begin with, and somebody came along today and proposed it, would anyone agree with it? I think this is a good test for lots of things, especially laws and policies that have been in place for a long time in this country, so that we take them for granted. But you should always think to yourself, okay, if this had not been in place, if I was not born into a country where this was already an established part of life, if that were not the case, and somebody came along and suggested it, what would I say? By the way, the income tax is this is a perfect example of this. The income tax and the withholding system, if that didn't exist and somebody came along and said, hey, let's put a tax on your income before you even spend it. Let's make it so the government can come in and take a chunk of your paycheck before you even get your hands on it. They're going to take a chunk. And they're going to take whatever chunk they want, by the way. You'll basically have no control over that. And actually, they're going to take too much, and they're going to hold on to it all year, and then they're going to give it back to you without interest at the end of the year. Like, who would agree to that right now if it was explained to them like that and it didn't already exist? Nobody would. Nobody would. There'd be no reason for anyone to agree to that. It would sound like the worst idea ever. But we're used to it, and so most people, just accept it as a granted. And it's the same thing with this. If someone came along now and said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we set it up so that if you come to this country illegally and have a baby, even if you have the baby 5 seconds after crossing the border, your baby is automatically a citizen, even though you aren't. Yeah, it'll be great. Let's make it so that we have millions of illegal immigrant families where some people are illegal and some aren't. This will be a lot of fun. Let's make it so that babies are citizens, but their parents aren't. Let's do that. What do you guys say? Let's try that one on for size and see how it goes. You would never, in the situation we're in right now, if someone proposed that, it would be hard no. No thanks. There's nothing about that sounds like it makes sense. And so if we know that if there's any policy where we would say to ourselves, okay, if someone suggested this now, I would think it was insane. Well, that means it's insane. It may not have been insane when it was put in place, or in some cases it was, but now it is. And so we got to change it. And I think that's certainly the case here. Let's talk about something that affects all of us, taxes. The October 15th deadline has passed, and if you're not prepared, you could be in for a world of hurt. Do you owe back taxes? Are your returns still unfiled? Did you miss the deadline to file for an extension? Now that we're past October 15th, the IRS is probably gearing up for some aggressive enforcement, and trust me, you don't want to be on their radar. We're talking wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, or even property seizures. It's not pretty, folks, but before you start panicking, there's still hope. Tax Network USA has helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt and filed over 10,000 tax returns. These guys specialize in reducing tax burdens for hardworking Americans just like you. Look, I get it. Dealing with the IRS is about as fun as a root canal, but ignoring the problem won't make it go away. So here's what you got to do. Don't wait any longer for a complimentary consultation. Call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. Their experts will walk you through a few simple questions to see how much you can save. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. If you're still searching for the perfect Christmas gift, look no further. DailyWire Plus gift memberships are 40% off. That's right, you can save big money while giving the gift of truth and entertainment this holiday season. When you gift a DailyWire Plus membership, you're giving a full year of uncensored daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media with limited ads, groundbreaking investigative journalism, access to our entire entertainment catalog, including What is a Woman, and the #1 documentary of the decade, Am I Racist? You're also giving live reports on breaking news with the real stories behind the headlines, the truth no one else will tell you, and full access to Bentkey, our kids app, featuring over 40 shows and 1,500 hours of fun, values-driven content. Finish your Christmas shopping with one click. Go to DailyWire.com now and give the gift of Daily Wire Plus. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. Yesterday, a certain headline caught my eye, mostly because it was sent to me by about 10 different people. The headline from a local far-left internet rag called the Nashville Scene says this: "What is Matt Walsh angling for?" Now, I'll admit that I clicked the link with great anticipation. I, perhaps more than anyone, would like to know what I'm angling for. Up until this moment, I didn't think I was necessarily angling for anything. There are things that I want, there are things that I'm working towards, things I'm trying to achieve, but I'm pretty open about all those things. In fact, I don't shut up about them. So angling, though, has a more secretive, sinister sound. It has the sound of plotting and scheming. I've never really done any scheming, or at least I didn't think that I had. That's why I was so fascinated to read this article, and so let's do that now. This is from the Nashville Scene. It's from a Nashville Scene writer who goes by the name Betsy Phillips. And here's what it says, quote, "I was watching conservative commentator Matt Walsh make his little speech outside the Supreme Court after arguments in U.S. versus Scrimeti about how we are going to continue to fight against transgender people. As the old joke goes, I was like, who is this we?" By the way, how is that an old joke? That's just a phrase. Sometimes it's used in a joking way, I guess, but I wouldn't call it an old joke. Does this person not understand what the word joke means? Probably not, but let's not get hung up on semantics. Continuing on. But like, it's William Lamberth all over again and other Tennessee politicians. Think about this. Just take a minute to let it soak in. 2 years ago, Matt Walsh gets all these Tennessee politicians to speak at an ostensibly anti-trans rally that ends up essentially being a Proud Boys rally. And as I've hammered on before, not a single politician there had the balls to say, hey, wait, no, I'm not headlining a Nazi rally. You'd think once bitten, twice shy, that Republican leaders would not hang out with Matt Walsh again, lest he surprised them with another photo op with proud racists. But no, off they go again to be by his side. Let's pause here for a moment again. Was my rally a Nazi rally? I guess it depends on how you define it. If you define a Nazi rally as a rally for Nazis, then no, it was not. But if you define it, as Betsy Phillips does, as any gathering of two or more white people who even vaguely disagree with Betsy Phillips on any political topic whatsoever, then yes, I suppose it was a Nazi rally. So, actually, they don't even need to be white. So just two or more people who disagree with this person about anything, that's a Nazi rally. And if that's how you define it, then yeah, I guess by that definition it was. So how did I get all these people to attend such a sinister gathering? Well, Phillips has a theory on that. That's quite a bit of pull. I mean it. You stick a bunch of politicians in front of the Proud Boys and those politicians are still kissing your ass years later? It means they'll tolerate a little public humiliation to be seen with Matt Walsh. Interesting. Who else in the state do you think could do that? Like most people, I'd just been assuming former pro wrestler and current Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs was going to be our next governor. After all, as my brother put it, he's the Undertaker's brother. Of course, Tennessee is going to vote for him, but watching Matt Walsh, I don't know. Y'all, I just got a bad feeling. So that's what I'm angling for, is to be the next governor of Tennessee. And I have to admit, at first I read this claim with some skepticism. As Matt Walsh myself, I doubted whether Matt Walsh wanted to run for governor or any other political office. My general understanding of Matt Walsh is that he would rather be fed feet first into a wood chipper than run for any political office at all. But what do I know about myself? Certainly not as much as the Nashville Scene knows. Quote, "We're grading on a curve here, and I'm tossing Clint Eastwood out since he's still too good looking to make it fair to other Republicans. But Matt Walsh is passably handsome. He's as attractive as Bill Lee and doesn't have those empty eyes. He's right in there with Jody Barrett, Clark Boyd, Kip Capley, and Kevin Vaughn in terms of conservative cutie patootiness." You know, I've never really spent much time thinking about where I fall on the vaunted cutie patootie scale, but, you know, on this point, and I say this totally objectively, in fairness, Phillips got it right. You know, I get a passing grade in handsomeness. That's at least a C-, folks, okay? That's according to the news, not me. I'm just giving you the facts. I may not be the sexiest man alive, but I am the most slightly above average man alive. Not too shabby. What are some other wonderful things about me? Let's find out. Quote, he's comfortable in front of cameras. He has a wife and kids and is religious, or at least he presents himself as religious. He has a huge platform and DailyWire money. Plus, he has a clear agenda that I obviously disagree with, that he communicates well. Now, I have to say, this is by far and away the most bizarrely complimentary hit piece I've ever read about myself. It's actually starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but let's continue anyway. Quote, and at least from the outside, it looks like Matt Walsh has accomplished all he's going to accomplish at the Daily Wire. He's written books, he makes movies. He's perhaps their best-known media personality who isn't either a raging, obviously unhinged lunatic or trying to clean up the platform's extremist viewpoints so that they're palatable to a bigger audience on their way to greener pastures. Or a has-been trying to remain at least a little relevant on their way down. Is he really going to hang around waiting to what? Age into Jordan Peterson? If the Supreme Court rules Walsh's way in U.S. v. Scrimeti, which it likely will, then what? He's won. Sure, he could continue to try to make trans people miserable, but that's boring cleanup work that has the potential to make him look weak if he can't accomplish it. He's worked hard and achieved his goal. Now, at this point, I have to clarify, I think, for the record, that I did not write this article myself. Okay, Betsy Phillips is not my pen name, I promise you. You'd be forgiven for being suspicious, but I promise I did not write this about myself. Now, this is the work of a leftist who I think it's trying to express disdain for me, but instead has accidentally declared that I am a highly accomplished, hardworking, handsome winner. Now, I've already sent this article to a team of trained and qualified fact checkers, and they've all come back and unanimously confirmed that all of the claims in this article are 100% incontrovertibly true. Indeed, what they told me, I'm just telling you what they told me. They said that this is the truest article the Nashville scene has ever published. In fact, it's their only true article. Reading on, quote, Walsh is on an upward trajectory right now, but he needs someplace for all this momentum to carry him. Even if he wanted a mainstream news career, what channel can offer him an audience bigger than what he already has? He would continue to press his way in entertainment, but to what end? To have a Hollywood hit? The whole point of Daily Wire's push in entertainment is to provide an alternative to Hollywood that centers conservatives. If Walsh can make a Hollywood hit, it disproves the basic premise of the whole Daily Wire ethos. Up for Walsh is politics. And with Governor Lee halfway through his second and final term, Tennessee's about to need a governor. I'm prepared to be wrong about this. I'm hoping I'm wrong about this. I hope you're all laughing at me about this in 2 years, and I will gracefully take the digs. Well, I'll try to gracefully take the digs, but this doesn't seem as unlikely to me after this week as it did before. So there it is. So let me just be honest with you. The truth is that I absolutely had not planned nor even considered running for governor or anything else. I would rather be tied to the top of a giant anthill and slowly eaten alive than run for office. There is no part of the process of running for office that I find remotely appealing. And in fact, I don't find the job of being governor or senator or congressman or even president to be all that appealing either. I mean, mostly it seems pretty boring. It involves way too many ceremonies and meetings, which are the two things I hate the most in the whole universe. Now, yeah, granted, I like the idea of having power, but I've always thought that, a position like king or emperor would be more suitable for a man of my tastes. Now, if anything, I thought that maybe I'd, make a run at becoming a tribal warlord in some third world country somewhere, then work my way up to despot, and then keep climbing the ladder until I have absolute power over millions of subjects who are permitted to do nothing but obey me unquestionably upon penalty of death. That had been sort of my career plan for the next 5 years or so. But then I read this article, and Phillips makes a lot of really good points. I was skeptical at first, but then I thought about it, and I began to see the truth in it. Because I'm pretty open-minded. And I always read articles. I'm always open-minded. I'm ready to, be convinced. And, I am handsome. I am smart. I am brilliant and charming. So we can also add that I'm humble because I'm willing to admit that the Nashville scene is right about all those points, right about how great I am. And frankly, here's what I'll say. I'm tired of the political divide in this country. I'm tired of the left and right being at each other's throats all the time, constantly disagreeing over everything. We need more unity. We need to see the value in other people's perspectives, which is why I'm going to unite with the Nashville scene on this issue. the issue of how I'm amazing and should be in charge of an entire state. So I want to thank Betsy Phillips and the Nashville scene. They've inspired me. I never thought of myself as a gubernatorial candidate until this moment, but now I'm thinking about it. In fact, I can announce right now that I am officially launching an exploratory committee to consider the possibility of running for governor. The committee will, have to take a number of factors into consideration. We'll have to find out the answer to certain questions. Questions like, can I still do a podcast if I run for governor? And if I do run and I win, which, as Phillips points out, I definitely will, what happens if I find out that being the governor is actually like super lame and boring? Would I resign at that point, or would I commit a bunch of scandals so that I could be impeached? The latter would be a lot more fun. It's a much more fun way to go. What are the chances that it lands me in federal prison? It's a complicated equation, and we got to take all these things into account. Who knows what will happen going forward? But running for governor is a possibility now, all thanks to Betsy Phillips and the Nashville scene. Just as I inspired the best article ever published in its pages, I have likewise been inspired to reach for the stars. And for that reason, I must say that neither Betsy Phillips nor the Nashville scene are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
John Bickley here, Daily Wire Editor-in-Chief. Wake up every morning with our show, Morning Wire, where we bring you all the news that you need to know in 15 minutes or less. Join me and my co-host Georgia Howe for daily coverage of all the biggest stories on Morning Wire.